Good evening. So, I guess all of us, or most of us, have seen now what transpired here on Friday. President Trump himself called it great television. And if you're not familiar with the United States, we have something what we call daytime programming. And that is the kind of stuff Jerry Springer, Oprah Winfrey, and Dr. Phil, that sort of stuff. All what was now missing in this to get to that level was that someone would have picked up a chair and threw a chair or something like this to the other side, and you would have the security people coming in there. This was sort of what was missing in this overall situation. Now, let me say one thing here, is in terms of, I've read all the news you can possibly read on it, from the United States, Europe, and in Russia. At this point, as the saying goes, everything is over when the fat lady sings. At this point, the fat lady has still not stepped onto the stage. That's where it's at. And when we're looking at this, we heard President Trump's remark in the last week or so, week and a half, that Zelensky is a dictator and that he played Biden like a fiddle and that sort of stuff. Now, if I put myself into Zelensky's shoes and I have to walk into this situation, what he walked into, knowing about the statements President Trump made about him in advance, for viewers who are not familiar with American English, the term played him, Biden, like a fiddle, is a term we use which means he took shamelessly advantage of it. He exploited Biden's soft spots. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it, when to say it, to get this out of Biden of what he desired for the Ukraine. It was not just him, but the overall government you have in the Ukraine. If someone tells me this, I would have played someone like a fiddle, in this case the predecessor, and I have to go into a board meeting and explain to the board, to the chairman of the board in this case, of how I was able to play the predecessor like a fiddle and gained a lot of monetary advantage out of this, which was also in terms of weapons in this case. Then I would have to really think about this, whether or not I'm going to go to this meeting in the first place, or on how I would approach this. So this would take a great deal of preparation and diplomacy, and you have to be very cunning and manipulative to do it. In other words, what Zelensky had to do now was he had to play Trump like a fiddle in order to get this what he actually came for, to bring the point across. But Trump, on the other hand, said this with the $350 billion in aid to the Ukraine. And I looked it up today. Officially, Congress approved $174 billion in aid to the Ukraine. That went through Congress. It was authorized by Congress, mostly by the request of Biden, and this was paid out in tranches, whether in military aid, weapons, some of it in cash, and so far and so on. Then there is several billions of dollars which are backed through the World Bank, where the United States is behind as a guarantor. I don't know exactly. I think that's another $25 billion on top of this, so you're closer now to $200 billion. And then there were other loans and guarantees, and some of this is basically, I wouldn't say as a donation, but not as a gift, but basically as a grant money, the way that is normally not to be paid back. And this was all bundled through different organizations, the G7. That was all part of this, which has not been properly, reported by the news media. Now, I'm not exactly sure on how much of the $174 billion from Congress has actually been distributed to the Ukraine, but it is pretty close to it because Biden opened up the spigot here, so to speak, in December and pressed the military to get as much of this material out, to get as close to that 174 billion they had authorized over the years since the war started until 2024, before Trump, or by the time Trump got elected. So we might be at $225 billion, somewhere around there, but it is substantially more than what the European news medias and other outlets are reporting, but it may not be as much as Trump asserted with 300 to 350 billion, unless there is money which, walked out of the door or fell off a truck or something like this, which got to them, which we don't know of, and that was sort of, concealed in the overall transactions, whatever the Biden administration did there. We will probably get to know all of this stuff. So this puts us now in a real interesting position. For one is, in my opinion, is that Trump didn't really entrap Zelensky here. Like I said, he was forewarned. But Trump basically is trying to find a way out of this, the United States. And I have said this for the last year and a half or so, that there was an anti-war effort here within the Republicans, which has grown stronger and stronger over the years since that war started, and a more pro-Russian, part in the Republican Party. And so he was trying to find a way out of it and to mend the relations back with Russia. And it may sound crazy, but we're dealing here with a president who is a businessman. That's what he has done all of his life, ran businesses. In every form, way, or shape you do this. And I have worked here in America. I've been here for 35 years. I have worked in the corporate world here in the United States. I understand board meetings or general meetings within, departments and over departments. And when you talk to the CEO and that sort of stuff, depending on what it goes, it can get pretty testy here. People are pretty short-fused, and that is a normal thing in the corporate world, which you encounter more often than not. And I'm pretty sure this was one of the reasons why I asserted that I wasn't really that interested on working for Elon Musk, for instance, because his type of leadership style is not exactly what I would like to be in a work environment, just to make this clear. Not that I don't acknowledge his accomplishments or any of that stuff. That has nothing to do with it. I'm more comfortable with other type of leaders, and I have my own business to begin with. So I usually come in from the outside anyway, which is kind of a little bit different to begin with, and avoids a lot of the stuff. But this is sort of what we're looking at. And with Biden, we had a president who has never worked a day in his life, because he started out as a career politician right out of school in Delaware, first in the state and in the local county there where he was at, and then being elected to Congress and to the Senate. And that's where he spent most of his time. This guy has never worked in the real world where most of my viewers and I daily engage in to make our living, to say this quite simple. And so the approaches here of both administrations are very, very, very different. Here we have a business environment and a business person, and so is J.D. Vance, a self-made millionaire who has done very well for himself, who has tackled all the challenges what business can throw at you successfully, and he came out on top of it, and he has worked his way up. He is a military veteran, so he knows the U.S. military quite well. And so we have some real capable people here. And of course, I'm a business person, so I'm interested in the financial aspects of all of this stuff. Politicians aren't. Politicians are concerned about votes, and whatever they think is going to get them votes is what they're going to do or going to say they're going to do and may not do, but do it differently or something else. And that is now the interesting aspect. So what do we think is going to happen? Well, first of all, we have to look at the other side of this with the sanctions, because that plays a big part of it, what no one is talking about. I'm here in the Kansas side of Kansas City, and we have somewhere in the middle of the state an extremely wealthy family by the name of Koch. In German, Koch, K-O-C-H. They're involved in anything that has to do with fossil fuels, basically. Whether it is gas, whether it is oil, or even other, coal and coal mining and all of this stuff. And the Koch brothers, it's two of them, I don't know, they're worth $50 billion, $100 billion. They're very, very rich people. They have a lot of political influence. In America, the only thing that gets you political influence is money. This country was based on money. This country exists because of the US dollar, and that is the only thing that glues this country together. If you're from any other part of the world of watching this is something you have to understand. So if someone like the Koch brothers get cut out of their investments in Russia because of sanctions, because Putin invaded the Ukraine, and they cannot get an exemption to this, meaning they have to basically let go of their whatever hundreds of millions or billions they have invested in Russia for mining. They bought mines and mining rights and that sort of stuff to all sorts of different steel and iron ore and coal and God knows what else they got going there in Siberia. They have a lot of things going on there. And so these people, they will talk to the president directly. They talked to Biden, and they got, with Biden, of course, they had a left-wing politician there who wasn't interested in billionaires, at least what he said, unless they were Democratic billionaires. The Koch brothers are Republican billionaires. So that didn't go well. So the Koch brothers basically were left out of this. Now they got Trump in there, and of course Trump is someone who's going to represent their interests first and foremost. And then there's more. Coca-Cola. Then you have McDonald's. You have Burger King. You got all of these companies, all these U.S. companies who have invested money over there. They don't care about the European companies. They don't care about Mercedes-Benz. They don't care about Bosch. They don't care about Siemens, AEG, or whoever, the French Thompson brand or whatever. They don't care about that. What they care about here is the United States businesses, the large corporations, because that's where the main tax revenue is coming in for this country. They're the biggest taxpayers. The rest of us make up the difference, more or less, a nickel, a penny, a dime at a time, something like this. And those people have more sway now in there than someone like Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. As terrible as this may sound, but this is the reality. So while now the Europeans, a little bit more center-left in general than the United States, they're going to be in full collision here with the American business interests. You see this with the talk about tariffs and so far and so on. So Trump is interested to get the corporate world back on track, first of all, and with it, indirectly, as a benefactor, Wall Street. This is what you're up against. So if Zelensky comes here to the United States and he thinks he can demand an extension of the war by getting more weapons out of it, when Trump is telling him or accusing him of having exploited President Biden to the maximum, like you would play some relative in your family for money until they're basically bone dry, then you're probably not going to have a good chance to get any more out of those people. That common sense should tell that anyone and everyone. If you listen to this, what Trump said, then you know that this is what would have transpired. So it was predictable that the outcome would be this, what we had, that he had to walk away. No deal for the minerals, rare earth minerals or any other things out of the Ukraine. And on the other hand, is no weapons or no more weapons. That is most likely what is going to result out of this. Now, the reason why we got this now is just because Zelensky asserted the trustworthiness of Putin. And I'm going to give you an example of why he brought this up, because he has a very valid point there. I read today the Pravda and TASS, and both newspapers, Russian newspapers or news media organizations, published articles where both referenced in their English version and in their Russian version an article in the Washington Post, which I am subscribed to, that someone wrote in the Washington Post an article that some unnamed official said that from the U.S. government that all aid or military aid would be cut out. Now, interestingly enough, they did put a link in that article, as it usually is the case, but not to the particular Washington Post article where that was stated or referenced. What the Washington Post wrote, it just basically directed you over to their main website, to the Washington Post website. In that one article, what the Washington Post had written early this morning was a what-if scenario is going to happen if President Trump is going to stop weapons deliveries and or military aid, whether it's the radar support for what they have right now through the space program, where the Ukrainians get detailed information about Russian troop movements and that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the Patriot missile system and the ATACMS, if this is going to get dropped out, if they're going to stop this. This was a what-if scenario. There was no talk yet that it indeed has been cut or that there are plans underway to cut this. That has not happened yet. I cannot say it will not happen, but it has not happened yet. So we can see on how dishonest the reporting actually is, especially when we look at the Russian-speaking or Russian publication of both news media outlets, is because that's what primarily the Russian viewer is going to read over there. And they get this information, which I know because I read the articles, is not correct the way they wrote this. So to correct this, we have to say, no, it has been probably talked about, but it is not official yet, or there's nothing in the works that these programs are going to stop at the moment where we are. May happen next week, it could, who knows. But for the moment right now, as we make the video, Saturday, March 1st of 2025, no, this has not happened. Now, when we look at this and we can see the reporting, then we understand Zelensky's concern that if President Trump is going to reach a deal, a peace deal, or at least a ceasefire and then peace negotiations, a permanent peace, with Putin, based on the fact that he rather, instead of having military personnel in the Ukraine, basically providing a protective shield, so to speak, with U.S. citizens who are working then together as business people and engineers and workers on exploiting the natural resources of the Ukraine to the benefit of both countries. And that is the point where Zelensky said, probably rightfully so, that this may not be enough. And he said that the Russians may still gonna invade or do whatever they're gonna do, whether there's Americans in there, Europeans, or who God knows who, besides the Ukrainians, and they will just march through this and attack these people. Normally when this happens, when you get to this point, is the Department of State issues a bulletin, an emergency bulletin, and asks all citizens to return back to the United States, as most other countries do too, if it gets to this conflict level where there is a possibility of that you're going to use, that human life is lost as a part of a military operation in this. And this is very viable. This could be possible. So let's just say we play this out, and we have Americans over there, and they starting to exploit and dig up and set this whole thing up to get the rare earth metals and titanium or whatever they got over there in the Ukraine unearthed, so to speak. The mining process starts, and there's going to be a lot of Ukrainian people who are going to have jobs in this. There has to be transported and cleaned and washed and prepared and God knows what else. So this goes into full swing, and then Putin decides he's going to do another invasion into this. You will have that these American people are going to leave because they're unarmed, they're civilians, they would be workers, executives, secretary, everything where you need to do this kind of stuff on a business level. They would leave. That leaves then the Ukrainians unprotected, unless the Ukraine, during this time, is going to start building up a defense industry, a real defense industry, so they can defend themselves, a military industrial complex. And that is something Zelensky has not really said anything about it. If what they have been going in under the given circumstances is admirable, the Ukraine, but to have a nation and to have a real nation, you have to have a real, especially in the position the Ukraine is, a really large industrial military complex. Mining titanium, of course, will help that because you will need a lot of titanium in the production of military equipment. And there is very little which has come on ideas or business proposals have come out of the Ukraine. Every time we hear Zelensky, he comes because he needs something. He has never come to the Western world and says, we need engineers, we need help, expertise, we need American European laser machines to manufacture the stuff we need to set. We have never heard this. Every time he comes, he needs something which is made somewhere else to defend themselves. And unless the Ukraine changes their course 180 degrees, and we are, so to speak, off the hook with giving them military equipment, they won't have a nation. They're a satellite country. They're a colony to the United States and to Europe. That's a colonial thinking, what he got there. And this is kind of still coming from 80 years of Soviet Union, of communism. This is how deeply ingrained this is over there. And they haven't gotten to this. They're still waiting for other people. This is the typical Soviet thing, was you always waited for someone else to do something for you instead of taking a full initiative on a large scale to do something. That is going to be the turning point for the Ukraine. Until we see this, until they ask the right questions, and they either come to the United States or to Europe and they say, we need large amounts of CNC machines, we need large amounts of of laser cutting equipment, of bending equipment, sheet manufacturing, and all of that stuff, which has to do with, what you need in terms of equipment to make your own stuff. Electronics, we need to buy semiconductors, we need to buy resistors, we need to buy microcontrollers, we need to buy all of this stuff. That you don't hear. What they're coming with is, we need a ready product. This is like I'm going to Germany or to France and I say I need 2,000 pounds of lobster tails from the French. I could go over there. I don't have French lobster tails here from the Atlantic or from the Bretagne. This is the thinking. This is the mindset in this. And until this changes, they ain't going to have a country. They don't have a nation. They don't have a country. That's how direct and straightforward this whole thing is. Meanwhile, while either Europe or the United States is supplying these weapons they cannot make at the moment, we are pushing the Russians further and further into getting their industrial military complex reignited. And they have been at it now for 2 years. They have woken up, and that machinery is coming. I know some guys on YouTube, they say they're using donkeys and all of this stuff. It's all propaganda one way or the other. On YouTube, this channel is not monetized. I don't make any money with it, and I don't ask anyone for anything. Here on this channel, I have no donations, no buy me coffee, no nothing. This here is free information, and I do not want to solicit money for any of this stuff. That is just because I have no agenda in it. I don't make anything out of this one way or the other. And here we have now the situation that every move we make, excuse me, is going to push the Russian Federation further into making more of another thing. Now, we have also to deal here in the United States with China and their activity with Taiwan in Asia to counter that effort over there. So there's a lot of things going on in this world. And the best thing is if each country can take care of its own needs. That is in the defense, and that is in the agricultural wise, food, for housing and all of this stuff. If you have to rely on other nations, that means you're not really having a country. You're not having anything. You're some satellite state of the World Bank, of whatever institution is giving you money. And this is part of this, that Trump is going after these NGOs here globally through that development thing they have here, which they're trying to shut down. So these countries learn to stand on their own 2 feet, more or less. You cannot tell me that you have countries in Africa which cannot develop a national economy. If the corruption is so bad, then you can't even send money over there to any place, because all of that money you're going to send is going to disappear into something, into everyone's pocket except for the people you're trying to help. That's a reality in this. So there's fundamental questions in there. The Chinese eventually are going to take over Africa anyway, because they're in the search of cheap labor. Now, the same way the American corporate world and the European corporate world once was when they discovered Chinese labor is cheap and Vietnamese labor, and this is getting now more expensive. So now the Chinese are outsourcing the work where they're paying too much to be competitive to Africa, and they have become the biggest investor in Africa, because we in the West don't want to invest over there, because we think this is imperialism and we feel like we're reestablishing our old colonies. So what we do is we yielded the whole thing over to China. That is just where it is at. Now, what I would like to hear from Zelensky, from the Ukrainian government, is how do you envision and how fast can you establish a fully working defense sector? And then come to us and say, we need that machinery equipment, we need these semiconductors, we need this stuff to make circuit boards. Then we're starting to get somewhere in this, because then you can fight your own war against Russia. And as bigger you build your military-industrial complex, you obviously have enough people over there, is better you can give the Russians to run for their money, and we are out of the loop in this. We can support you on a business level, whether it's in an exchange with raw materials like you got, or then business technology coming back, manufacturing equipment coming back to you. You have enough people, you should be able to pull this off. You also have areas which are not attacked or not as easily attackable by the Russians. And that's my opinion on this. With that, you have a great night.